Hey everyone, it's Matt from Train Sim Society and welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. So after watching the November roadmap stream, I definitely think it is very needed that we have an honest conversation about the current state of TSW, where the priorities seem to be, and why I'm honestly really concerned about where this game is headed, specifically for consoles, but honestly for everyone in general. If you know me, if you watch my videos, you know I am very critical, but constructively critical. If something's working great, if something is great, I love to mention it and give praise where it's due. But when things just aren't working, or when there's a very serious problem or an elephant in the room in this case that needs to be addressed, oh, I'm gonna address that bad boy. And speaking of said elephant, there are serious problems that need addressing before they do permanent damage to the franchise. So if you spend any time in the TSW community, you absolutely cannot miss this. Blurry textures are everywhere, literally. For console players on Gen 9 hardware like PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S, this has become a crisis that is fundamentally breaking the entire experience. We are talking about our latest and current generation of consoles, all of our newest hardware. Now on our current gen systems, we are talking about entire routes where textures refuse to load properly, whether that be external textures or in-cab interiors that are supposed to be highly detailed. Now, players are reporting this on nearly every recent release, and it has only been getting worse. The Series X and PlayStation 5 are very powerful machines, yet players on them are being told to switch to lower resolution modes or to use workarounds to accept a degraded experience just to make the game function properly. That's just not acceptable. Console players feel abandoned. They're watching PC players enjoy a relatively stable experience while their gameplay is plagued by issues Dovetail seems either unable or at least unwilling to fix with the priority we would expect given these issues. And console players make up a significant portion of the player base. Dovetail has acknowledged that console sales are important to keep the game going, but the blurry texture situation goes well beyond just a visual problem, and this represents a pattern of adding new things without properly optimizing what's already there. Routes that worked fine in TSW4 are now struggling in TSW6. Content that had no issues suddenly develops problems after core updates, and instead of fixing the foundation of the game, we just keep building more on top of it. The texture issue comes down to memory management and texture streaming. The game's trying to load too much at once, running out of texture memory, then downscaling things to compensate. And when you're sitting up close to something, like in a cab you're supposed to admire, you see the ugly face of those downscaled textures that usually don't resolve unless you save and quit out, then reload back into your service, only for them to slowly appear again throughout your service. This problem's been creeping up since around TSW4 or early TSW5. It's been getting progressively worse with each release and each new feature, each new route that pushes the system harder. The game is buckling under its own weight, and console players are bearing the brunt of it. But blurry textures are just one piece of a much larger pattern. There are bugs in TSW6 that have existed since TSW4, game-breaking issues affecting core functionality, the frozen passenger bug, UI toggle problems, audio glitches, our own core systems, the entire passenger experience basically, train faults, announcements, conductor or guard mode, you name it, it is probably broken in some capacity. Oh, not to mention timetables and broken services, signaling errors, dispatcher problems, and yes, even achievement bugs. Heck, I was just playing Birmingham to Crew last night night. I can't even enjoy the free roam mode anymore. If I spend more than 2 hours in it, the entire timetable completely locks up. Still, it doesn't matter what route you're on. Trains just start getting stuck at red signals. You delete trains to clear paths, and eventually after a few minutes, they just all get stuck again. There's no point in even really using that anymore, which sucks because that's how I personally prefer to play, like a real engineer would. The community's been reporting these for years. Players file tickets, they post detailed bug reports and try to help track down causes, and a lot of these reports often seem to vanish into a void. Now, Dovetail does fix some bugs, and if you look at the patch notes, the lists of some of them are very long, but it's usually just stuff that's on the more minor side, like localization improvements or little scenery issues here and there, and there just really hasn't been any work done to major core systems or much bigger problems like blurred textures or timetable issues and signaling problems. After several years, these issues still remain as major issues that honestly, in my opinion, have no end in sight. Then we have a new TSW release that comes with its own problems. Whatever new issues we receive from that then take priority, and then old issues get buried even deeper. The annual release cycle allows them to avoid accountability. TSW5 becomes TSW6, which will then become TSW7. With each new release, older content gets classified as legacy, giving them an excuse to stop patching it. Release a game, pump out DLC for a year, let the bugs accumulate, release a new version that carries many of those same bugs forward, rinse and repeat. Now, what bothers people most is it feels like there's no incentive to fix these issues. I mean, at the end of the day, bug fixes don't make Dovetail money. New DLC makes them money. So as you would expect, resources are allocated towards creating new content rather than maintaining what exists. And like I've talked about so many times on the channel, that is a business decision that slowly destroys trust with your dedicated players. What makes this even more frustrating is that they actually used to have a solution. Now, if you're a newer TSW player, the concept and term preservation crew is probably pretty foreign to you, but this was a dedicated team of 5 people from what I've read, specifically tasked with addressing player concerns and fixing bugs in older content. For 2 years, they worked on bringing routes up to standards and implementing improvements and addressing issues the community reported, and then they were disbanded. The community still doesn't understand why. Now, Adam Lucas, who led that team, has said they completed thousands of changes during their time, but the work often sat waiting for release, and then suddenly the team was gone. Now, that was way back during the TSW2 and TSW3 era, and the absence of that dedicated maintenance team is definitely being felt now more than ever with each new release that we get. You can definitely see it in the feedback that's left over on the forums. Routes from that original TSW2 era that the preservation crew worked on are still in better shape than TSW4 routes that never got that same attention. There was a time when we had a team whose job was maintenance and quality, and they got rid of it. And unless they bring something like that back, I think that tells you everything about where their priorities lie. So the November roadmap stream happened, and this was supposed to be a chance to address the elephant in the room. And here's how it actually went down. The first half of the stream focused on announcing new content, or at least touching on content that had already previously been announced. Just usual roadmap stuff, you know. We have a lot of new content on the way within the next couple of months, and then even more as we head into next year. New routes, new locos, and gameplay packs and stuff that players can buy. Then they spent a significant chunk of time on Metro Rivals, which we will get to in a minute. And then towards the latter part of the stream, they addressed the actual issues. Blurry textures, communication improvements, how they handle feedback. Now, these discussions were there, but they felt a lot shorter and less emphasized compared to the time that they spent hyping future paid content. Now, to be fair, they did provide technical detail on the blurry texture situation, and I do do appreciate that detail. They explain texture pools, memory management, MIP levels, Unreal Engine streaming. They also mentioned investigating a potential bug with the map system keeping textures in memory, and they said it's high priority and that they're working hard on it. But after listening to all of that, my reaction was just, you're still not getting it. You're building a game barely holding together under the weight of everything you're adding. You're clearly not doing proper testing and optimization before shipping content. You're prioritizing features and DLC over stability and performance. When they talked about this issue existing since TSW4 or early TSW5 and how older content that used to work fine now has problems, that tells you this is a core architectural issue and it's fundamental to how the game's being developed and maintained. Just thinking about this stream from a wider perspective, the structure of it in its entirety really told its own story. They lead with exciting new purchases, spend time on the shiny new project, address the serious problems a little more briefly at the end, and I think that in itself sends a message about priorities, whether intentional or not. I don't know, given the outcry that I have seen on social media, in their YouTube comments, on their forum pages, in their Discord, I would have expected them to lead their roadmap with addressing the elephant in the room and actually taking some serious accountability, because it is unacceptable. Now, I do want to acknowledge some positives. Dovetail has made improvements in forum communication. The addition of Candace and I think Tito as community managers has meant more consistent responses to bug reports and feedback. That's an awesome improvement, so I want to first clarify that. I have personally noticed Candace's presence over on the forums. I've even recognized in the Birmingham 2 crew feedback thread, she was leaving responses letting everyone know that everything that was discussed prior to her response has been noted and logged and that they're reading and seeing things. And I think sometimes just hearing from them like, we see you, we hear you, your reports are being logged, I think that goes a very, very long way. And in the past, generally speaking, I just feel like the feedback threads were really just players venting and ranting into oblivion with really not much there in terms of response from the actual devs or team. So I think that's an awesome step. But communication only matters if it leads to action. You can have the best community management in the world, but if problems don't actually get fixed, then people stop caring about the acknowledgements. There was a really telling moment in the stream where Alex discussed how they handle feedback from multiple add-ons with numerous issues, and he was framing it as a communication challenge. How do they prioritize between them? And the obvious solution he didn't say is stop releasing so many add-ons if they're launching with that many issues. It's simple. This is a production and quality control problem. Matt also mentioned TSW has frequent releases and that makes their development cycle different from other developers and studios, and he said this while explaining why bugs happen, why patches sometimes break things, but he was describing the problem, literally explaining what's wrong, but then treating it like an unavoidable reality rather than a choice. These are business decisions. When those decisions directly contribute to quality problems, it's time to reconsider them. They also talked about a patch that went out with a fix that caused a new bug. That bug was already identified and fixed internally, but queued for the next patch because they had to stop somewhere to get through QA. I think they mentioned these systems didn't flag it properly, so it shipped broken. Matt called it embarrassing, and I agree, but embarrassing doesn't capture how players feel dealing with the broken game. It's not even in the realm of words that I would personally use. And all of this is happening while juggling, by their own admission, a huge volume of projects, a ton of add-ons releasing near term, a ton more further out, probably sometime next year, and that's not counting core updates and patches. It's just way too much. They're spreading themselves too thin, and the game's suffering for it. I do want to acknowledge something positive from the roadmap stream, specifically this section where Alex gave a very detailed rundown of fixes coming. So they're working on more core improvements, yet another pass at the train faults issue, specifically why engine faults still occur on the 220 and why faults are occurring when you disable them. They're addressing Riviera Line's seawall textures, lighting improvements, performance optimization for the Morristown line in regards to distant scenery, and also a bunch of fixes for Leipzig to Dresden and the BR294. So definitely good communication there. Very happy to see them continuing to work on core TSW6 issues. But here's the thing, and I don't say this to diminish their efforts. This train faults issue has now taken multiple passes through multiple patches, and it's still clearly a problem. The fixes they're announcing are addressing issues that shouldn't have made it to launch in the first place, or problems that previous patches were supposed to resolve. So, while I am appreciative of the ongoing work and the improved communication about what is coming, it really doesn't change the core argument here. Content is still releasing extremely unpolished. Routes and features are shipping in states that need immediate patching and constant patching, and the pattern continues. Release first, fix later, hope the fixes actually stick this time, and I have a strange feeling that we're probably going to need more passes for the faults thing, because I think this is attempt 2 or 3 now with faults. I definitely wanted to mention this because it is important to recognize when they're doing things right with communication, but better communication about fixing problems doesn't solve the issue of why those problems keep happening in the first place. Now, in the middle of this roadmap stream addressing concerns about TSW state, they spend significant time talking about Metro Rivals New York, which is a completely different game that Dovetail is developing. So it's a simcade experience set in a futuristic New York subway where you race trains. It's being built in Unreal Engine 5, which is a significant upgrade from TSW's current Unreal Engine 4. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with a company developing multiple titles, but the timing and optics of promoting it this heavily during a TSW roadmap stream when TSW is struggling with serious performance and optimization issues just feels really off, and like I've mentioned in a previous video, very tone deaf. I'm still gonna stand by that statement. I will die on that hill. I just do not like it. They spend considerable time showing screenshots and GIFs, discussing advanced rendering technology, procedural generation systems, how much they're learning about UE5, and Matt talked enthusiastically about how the team's having a lot of fun and how exciting the new technology is, and all of that is great. But while they're talking about all of this, I'm just thinking to myself, your current game is broken for a significant portion of your player base, and you're spending this time promoting a different game that you want people to spend their money and buy. The message it sends is that Dovetail is more excited about their new project than fixing their existing one. They're learning UE5 for a game that might not even appeal to the core TSW audience, while TSW continues struggling with UE4 limitations and poor optimization, especially on consoles. They said the lessons from Metro Rivals could eventually benefit TSW. Maybe that's true, but that's a long-term possibility, not a solution to current problems. 9th gen console players dealing with blurry textures right now do not benefit from the team learning procedural city generation in a different engine. Again, tone deaf. So the bigger concern, what does this mean for TSW's future? Well, if Dovetail's investing resources into UE5 for a new game, are they eventually abandoning TSW? Are we looking at a future where they announce TSW and UE5 as essentially a new game where purchased content doesn't carry forward? We really don't know. They were asked directly about TSW and UE5, and Matt's response was that there are no answers to those questions right now. That's honest, but it's not reassuring when you've invested hundreds of dollars in DLC. Even setting aside future concerns, the immediate problem is priorities and perception. When your community is begging you to fix the game they're currently playing and your response is promoting a different upcoming game, it just doesn't land well. Now, in the roadmap Q&A, someone asked directly whether we can still expect TSW to be a yearly release. Alex's response was long and corporate, but the bottom line is, yeah, expect annual releases to continue because it's working from a business perspective. He talked about reaching new players and growing the studio year over year. He acknowledged upgrading each year is inconvenient, but framed it as necessary for their business model. And I get it, companies need to make money. Even I've talked about this before. I understand why they do it, but it doesn't mean it's a business practice that I personally agree with. But from a player's perspective, this structure is actively hurting the game. And And when you do that, this is what happens. Again, TSW6 launches with bugs, some carried over from TSW5 and 4, and even 3, yes. New DLC releases with its own bugs, developers work on fixes, but also on new content and already on TSW7. Resources are then split between maintaining that current version, producing new content, and then developing the next version. Then TSW7 comes out. Bugs from TSW6 either carry forward or get classified as legacy content issues that are lower priority. Yet once again, the cycle repeats. Meanwhile, TSW5 and earlier are essentially abandoned. And each time this happens, it at least seems like to me in my own perspective that the amount of issues that we are encountering is increasing exponentially, because now we're stacking TSW 2, 3, 4, and 5 issues on top of 6 issues. And I'm not just talking about core issues like the passenger system, guard mode, timetables, signaling, dispatcher, announcements. I could go on for hours, but also route specific or loco specific issues as well. And when more content comes and more content layers with other content, it just increases that number of issues sevenfold. Now I want to talk about our latest release for TSW6 Birmingham to Crew. This is a perfect example. It released way too quickly after TSW6 launch, and it was a rough launch. Now this was developed by All Aboard Studios, which is a third party, and yes, some issues were specific to their work, but there were also a lot of other problems that were core game issues. Things that shouldn't have made it through QA regardless of who developed the route. Things that suggested proper testing with the current version wasn't happening before release. So the fault lies on both sides there. But there's pressure to keep content flowing, maintain the DLC schedule, so quarters get cut, testing gets rushed, routes ship in states they shouldn't. When issues get reported, developers are already moving on to the next thing. There's always something new demanding attention, so problems never really get the focus that they need or the focus that they should get. The focus on bringing in new players through annual releases does make sense for their business growth, but what about the players already here? The absolutely wonderful community supporting this game that have been doing so for years, buying DLC and providing feedback, sticking through all of these rough patches. When your priority is constantly chasing new customers rather than taking care of existing ones, you risk losing your player base foundation. And in a very niche sim like this, that's extremely dangerous. If it wasn't already obvious, TSW doesn't have mass market appeal like Flight Simulator, for example. So the existing community is valuable and shouldn't be taken for granted. But this affects everyone, not just console players or Gen 9 console players. Now, those folks do make up a significant portion of TSW's player base, and Dovetail has said this themselves. That means console sales are a major revenue stream for them. If console players stop buying DLC, that revenue is going to drop. And what happens when revenue drops? There's less money for development. That means fewer resources for bug fixes. That means smaller teams and less ambitious routes, fewer loco add-ons or gameplay packs, and just overall quality will decrease across all platforms. Now, when PC players say, well, it works fine for me, I think they're missing the bigger picture here. The health of the console version directly impacts the PC version. They're funding the same development pipeline. So beyond that, the core issues, rush releases, unfinished bugs, prioritizing new content over stability, that affects everyone. And also, PC players aren't immune to broken timetables or glitchy UI. I run into so many of these issues myself, particularly issues with timetables or signals and dispatcher problems and trains just gridlocking after an hour into a service. Again, like I mentioned earlier, the free roam mode is virtually pointless, especially on busier routes. Don't even attempt it on New York to Trenton. But the difference is that PC can brute force through some performance issues consoles can't. And the way that PC systems manage memory is also a lot different than the way consoles manage memory. Most of us have different system configurations and we're able to upgrade our systems. And with memory being shared between your RAM and VRAM and all of that stuff and motherboard, you're a lot less likely to run into problems, specifically texture issues on PC, but that doesn't mean that we still don't experience issues. But as the game keeps growing and is getting more bloated with more content and more layers, even PC performance will suffer noticeably. I've even been noticing it on newer routes. A lot of folks are seeing frame drops near busy stations or areas with a lot of scenery, longer load times, and more stuttering. That's been a bigger issue with me lately, especially on Birmingham to Crew. And these problems get worse as the game gets heavier without more optimization. The other concern is what this pattern means for the franchise's long-term viability. So honestly, I think Dovetail needs to slow down. The pace of content releases is unsustainable, and it is directly contributing to quality problems. And if you deny that, I think you need to wake up. Fewer releases that are properly tested and optimized would serve the game better than a constant stream of half-baked and unready content. Yes, that might mean less revenue short-term, but it means a healthier game long-term. That means dedicating resources specifically to optimization and bug fixing. And if they say there are already resources there needs to be more. There needs to be more of a priority. I don't want to see blurry textures as just a side project while the DLC production continues. I think we need to be pulling more people who can potentially help get that resolved away from DLC and onto that. I think it would be beneficial to maybe have a period where new content slows significantly while the team focuses on making what exists actually work. And speaking for consoles specifically, I think they definitely need to have optimization be the priority. I don't know why they don't have a console specific version optimized specifically for their platforms and hardware instead of just porting the PC version. But that is beyond my scope of understanding. Whatever the solution, the current state where console players pay full price for a degraded experience is not acceptable. I also think the annual release cycle needs reconsidering. Maybe releases become biennial instead, giving more time for proper development and bug fixing. Maybe the structure changes so new versions are more like major updates than separate releases fragmenting the player base. I think a little more transparency about the future would be nice. If Dovetail is seriously considering moving to UE5 or developing a new train sim that maybe would replace TSW, I think players deserve to know now while deciding whether to invest more money into the current game given its current state. But I need to start wrapping this up. Again, I'm making this video because I care about this game. I care about this genre. I love TSW. Train simulation is niche enough that we can't afford for the main player in the space to be putting out a deteriorating product. And I also think that's part of the problem. There's no competition in the train sim market, so Dovetail can kind of do whatever they want because they know players are gonna buy it. There is talent at Dovetail. Roots can be stunning. Logo detail is honestly often remarkable. When things work correctly, TSW definitely delivers an experience that nothing else matches. But again, when it works and functions correctly, which isn't always. And that is just why it's so frustrating to see the game struggling with very preventable problems. Now, if they made these changes, slowing things down, focusing on quality over quantity, properly optimizing for all platforms, including consoles, fixing the foundation and core of the game and the core features, which I know we're going to be getting more of with TSW 7, and I hope we don't get any more until the ones we currently have are fixed, I think the game would be better for it. Better in ways that would make more players happy and probably make the game more successful long term. But that's going to require a shift in priorities. Valuing existing players as much as potential new ones. Valuing stability as much as new features. And being willing to sacrifice some short-term growth for long-term sustainability. I really do think the next few months will be telling. If we see actual improvements like blurry textures fixed, years old bugs addressed, new content releasing in an acceptable state, then maybe there is a reason for optimism. But if it's business as usual, I definitely think that more people will continue to walk away. And if they do, I don't blame them. I'm definitely going to keep covering the game and providing feedback and hoping things improve, but I'm also going to be honest about what I'm seeing, even when that's uncomfortable. Definitely let me know down below what you think. Are you seeing the same issues that I've discussed here in this video? Are you hopeful that things will improve in the future? Are you concerned? Or are you one of those players that is considering walking away and just isn't interested in spending more money on DLC that could launch in the state that some recent DLC has launched in? I definitely want to hear from you. As always, thank you so much for clicking and watching. Take care, guys, and happy rail simming.